How are we doing? Just out for a bit of a walk in my garden. I thought I'd bring you along and share a couple of pointers for you that have helped me in my journey with money and finances. Now, I've got to tell you, this is not financial advice. I'm not here to give you financial advice. I'm just giving you my opinions and what's worked for me. If you need financial advice, you should go and see someone. That's what I did, and that's what helped me as well. So, stuff that got me into trouble. When I was a kid, I never had anything really, never had any money. My parents worked bloody hard. They provided what they could, but we didn't have any money. You know, at one point we had the bailiffs at the door for a tax bill that my father couldn't pay because he had a bad accountant. And part of that is he didn't look at his accounts. He didn't know any better really, you know, and it ended up where he was having to pay a huge amount of money, and it put the fear of life into everybody in the house. And you know, it was a pretty scary time because they were going to take the house from my parents, and they got out of it, but it was a really difficult, very difficult time. So, you know, growing up after that, in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s, I just didn't care about money. I did care about money. That's the wrong thing. I cared about money, but I wouldn't check how much money I had in the bank or how much I spent, and it was always a fear, you know, especially when I got married in my 20s. You know, me and my partner, me and my wife, we had to, you know, get things going, and you know, we had 3 kids, and it was always a problem until I got cancer. And then when I got the cancer, it gave me that wake-up call. If you want to listen to what happened with my cancer, I've got an episode before this one that you can look at. Anyway, after we got that cancer diagnosis and what have you, I really decided to get my finances and my life in order. And one of the things we did was we read The Barefoot Investor. We went through the book, we came up with a plan, and we really started looking at our finances and stuff that I wish I'd known back in my 30s or my late 20s. Would have had any difference? Probably. Yeah, it probably would have done. Would have changed anything? Yeah, it probably would have changed a bit. Would have made me think a bit more. And it would have given me a little bit more assurance going forward. So getting the basics right, what I wish I'd known in my 20s, 30s, 40s, but what I really wish I'd known in my late 20s and going into my 30s. I want to share a couple of things with you today. So let's get on with it. I'm going to sit down and we're going to have a little chat about some of the stuff that can help you. One of the things that people don't do is actually look at their bank accounts. And I think it's a fear thing because they're worried about actually how much money they are spending on crap, on useless things, you know, how much debt they're in, how much they own on the credit cards. It's a big problem. You know, I had that fear. I didn't look, I didn't want to know. It filled me with fear, it filled me with dread. But you got to get a handle on it and get a grip and look at these things if you are to get yourself out of it. Now, the hardest thing is that it is hard work. It's not easy. You're going to have to bloody work hard at it. It's not a quick fix. It's something that's going to take a bit of time, but you can do it. I can do it. You can do it. Here's a couple of things that you need to start off understanding. One, you need to understand what you've got in your bank account, right? You need to understand 4 things. So your income, your expenses, your assets and your liabilities, right? How much money have you got coming in? How much money is going out? What's your assets, your physical assets, what you actually own outright, and what your liabilities are. So your liabilities could be a car loan, credit card. Your expenses are your daily expenses, your weekly, your monthly. That could be rent, rates, electric, gas, whatever that might be. Get a handle on those 4 things, and it's really quite simple. The simple thing is to understand is it's just 2 things: how much you've got coming in and how much you've got going out. Now, obviously, the simple thing is to know that if you've got more money going out than you've got coming in, you got a problem, all right? You're living beyond your means. That is an issue. How can you solve that? Well, this is where you've got to come in and have a look at your budgets, have a look at budgeting and, you know, reducing your spending on silly things, on consumerism, on stuff that's not important. You know, looking at stuff online, on Amazon, on any of these sites and just spending stuff, Temu, AliExpress. I still spend some money on those things, but I know how much money I've got to spend and I don't spend beyond my means. So you've got to get a grip on those things first, right? Do a checklist, get a list out, find out what you owe, find out what your expenses are, and then look at cutting these things back, right? Second thing is, what is your net worth? Now, not what your gross worth is. That's not how many houses you've got, how many cars you've got, caravans, boats, whatever it might be, but what you own outright and what you own as opposed to the bank owns, all right? I could say, hey, I've got a house that's worth $1.5 million. Wow, my net worth is 1.5 million. No, it's actually not, because my mortgage might be $1.4 million. So my net worth is only $100,000. Find out what your net worth is. It's no good thinking that you've got $1.5 million if you've only got $100,000, right? So get a grip on that. Third thing is, start reading. Start looking from the library, from a bookstore if you can afford it. I would get them from the library because there's some books that you can get free. Start looking at some YouTube people from finance experts online. I'm telling you my story. I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you what worked for me. It might not work for you, but you've got to start somewhere. You've got to get going. You've got to make things work for you to get yourself out of a situation that you don't want to be in. Nobody wants to be in debt. Read some good books. I would start with The Barefoot Investor. If you're going to read a book, read that one. That one will really give you some strategies, give you some structure, and help you to make sense of all this madness. Second thing is, we're on fourth thing, I think, fourth or fifth thing, is get yourself an emergency fund. So an emergency fund is things that come up that are unexpected, like your car breaks down, you need some new tyres, you need a new radiator on the car, your air conditioning unit breaks down at home. Have you got extra income? Have you got some money tucked aside to have this emergency fund? Barefoot Investor calls it an extinguisher fund, so it's like a fire extinguisher, put something out really quickly, and that would be something that turns up unexpectedly, you know. Just plan to have something in that which is a couple of $1,000, up to $5,000, sat there in the bank account, away from everything else that you never touch. That's just for emergencies, and you'll be surprised that you will need it. Okay. The other thing is, when you get on top of your expenses, start saving for an emergency fund. That's like 5 to 6 months worth of expenses for yourself. If you were to become unemployed, lose your job, you got sick and you didn't have anything to fall back on, what would you do? You don't want to be homeless. You don't want to be calling friends and asking for money. Start saving for a little emergency fund that you can fall back on. So have that ready. Get those things done. Start reading some books. Start with The Barefoot Investor. Get yourself set up in a position where you can move forward and start saving. But the trick is, you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start doing it. You've got to put in some hard work. I know you probably don't want to hear that, but that's the way it is. Nothing in this life comes easy. There is always a price to pay. You got to pay it sometime. You know, you don't want to be in a position where you're stuck. You can't do anything. You know, you can't go anywhere. There's no friends to turn to. You got no finances. it's a horrible place to be in. So just, you know, try and do some of these things and get yourself into a position where you can actually help yourself, help you, your family, your partner, you know, where you're going to be okay. In these first months, you really need to work on spending less and, you know, taking a lunch to work, getting some coffee pods, getting a pot of coffee and take that to work and use that, you know, instead of spending it at lunchtime on food. Or, you know, how many colognes do you need? How many perfumes do you need? How many pairs of jeans do you need? You don't need a lot. You'd be surprised at how much you can actually save. Yes, things are expensive at the minute, you know. Fuel's very expensive. Food's expensive. Electricity prices are going up. You know, everything's really hitting home and hitting hard. So just try to pull those things back that you can, you know. You know, I traveled to work. I was using the car to get to work, and my fuel bill was, you know, maybe $100, $120 a week. Now I've switched to using the train. It's an extra half an hour each way in my day, but with doing that, I've saved myself, like, my fares back and forward to work are $1 a day. So, you know, 5 days a week, it's cost me $10 to get to work. It's a massive saving. So you can do things, you can help yourself. Just try to do the basics first, you know, and don't be too hard on yourself. You've got to start somewhere and you've got to get it done. I wish I'd known these things when I was in my 30s. I wish I'd started to do these things, especially budgets. Budgets is the main thing. Get yourself a spreadsheet and work from that spreadsheet and try and get yourself out of trouble. Make a plan and move forward from there. And don't get disheartened, because it's quicker than you think. It will happen. You can make this work. You can get it done. You just got to have a little bit of discipline and a little bit of bloody mindedness and say, right, I'm going to do this. We are going to do this. We're going to get down and we're going to knuckle down to the hard work and we're going to get it done. So I hope I've helped with a couple of things today. It's like I say, I'm not a financial advisor. That's not my job. I'm just someone like you who is the same, you know, going through life and not thinking about this stuff. You've got to start thinking about it. You've got to start getting this stuff in order and really think about where you're headed, because let me tell you something, from 25 to 50 comes around very, very quickly. Before you know what you're doing, you're 50, you've got no super, you've got no savings, and you're in trouble. Start now, start today. I'll see you in the next one.